If you thought Pokemon Legends EA was going to be the biggest disaster in the franchise, then I'm here to tell you that you haven't seen anything yet. I know it sounds insane, but things are not looking good for the 10th generation of Pokemon games, and it definitely can get worse. And that's because credible leaks for Pokemon's 10th generation suggest that these games are shaping up to be the most ambitious in the franchise's history, and that is exactly the problem. And yet, I kid you not, Pokemon fans are already making wish lists for these games that are completely divorced from reality. Like, they are genuinely overdosing on hopium, and it's honestly super sad. So today we're gonna dive deep to figure out what exactly is going on with Pokemon's 10th generation and why it is functionally impossible for it to be the game that you want it to be. But first, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Tiger came to say hi again. She said you guys gotta like the video because we're gonna get a lot of Pokemon haters dropping dislikes down there, so please help us out. Okay, let's start off by figuring out what exactly is the 10th generation of Pokemon actually supposed to be. And many of you might already know that there were massive leaks a couple of weeks ago that shared a tremendous amount of detail as to what exactly the developers wanted this game to be. Now, we're not going to cover all the leaks in this video, but I do just want to touch on some of the higher level concepts and things that have been corroborated by multiple sources, which suggest that these are the most likely things to appear in the 10th generation of Pokemon. Okay, so the first thing that we have to touch on is that the speculative title of these games are Pokemon Wind and Pokemon Waves. The director is allegedly Shigeru Omori, which is the same director from Scarlet and Violet and previous Pokemon games all the way back, I think, through Sun and Moon, if I'm not mistaken. These games will allegedly have the themes of infinity and survival, and it's going to be in more of a Southeast Asia or Indonesian setting, and the progression through the game will be similar to that of Scarlet and Violet in that it will have an 18 challenge progression system. Some of those challenges will actually just be gym battles. Other challenges might be things similar to what we saw in Scarlet and Violet with like Titan Pokemon, for example. On top of that, there's a lot of talk about procedural generation for parts of the map. So the map isn't going to be infinitely generative like you would see from Minecraft, for example, but because the game is allegedly supposed to be set in Indonesia or Southeast Asia, apparently there's going to be islands that are built randomly with procedural generation. On top of this, we also have some battle gimmicks. Apparently the game is going to focus a lot on weather related effects and also different blessings from the different island Pokemon or something like that. We're also apparently going to have some underwater exploration as well, and one of the biggest headlines that came out about Pokemon's 10th generation is that the budget is $20 million, which would be very much believable considering that the budget for Legends EA was 13 million. So they're just gonna bump that up a little bit because these games are going to be developed apparently for the Switch 2 specifically. So we are leaving the Switch 1 behind. Honestly, that shouldn't surprise pretty much anybody. They're going to want to sell as many Switch 2s as possible. So if you thought the Switch 2 was just going to be like a Switch Pro and it was just future games were going to be on both consoles moving forward, I'm sorry to tell you that is just not true. That was abundantly clear because it's called the Switch 2. It's obviously the sequel. A lot of people just didn't want to believe that. But anyway, all of these alleged leaks are within the context of Pokemon Wind and Waves being built on a new engine, right? And a new engine for the games, and allegedly that is supposed to address a lot of the technical issues from the previous open world Pokemon games, specifically with Scarlet and Violet. And I think if you look at what a lot of the alleged leaks are for Wind and Waves, they start to look very familiar from what we see in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, right? We're talking about a vast open world. We're talking about an 18 challenge progression structure throughout the game's story or various stories. Apparently the game will be non-linear, just like was the case with Scarlet and Violet. And not only are we going to have an open world this time around, but some components of that world are going to be randomly procedurally generated, which is just, it's no longer a finite world, it is an infinite world, which is just insane. So now that we kind of are all on the same page with what generation 10, Wind and Waves is supposed to be, what the development is looking like, what their goals were for these games, let's take a look at what one Pokemon fan's wish list is for the rumored Wind and Waves games. This was posted over on Polygon. Pokemon Gen 10 should combine the best elements of past games. Oh boy, I wonder what those best elements are going to be. I love this part, by the way. Now that Pokemon Pokemon Legends ZA is out in the wild, let's ponder what Pokemon's next generation should be. Okay, so surely this article will drill down on the things that Pokemon has done right over the last nearly 30 years, right? Like that would make sense. The next generation Pokemon should be more of what they are good at doing, right? So that's what this article should probably start with, right? Oh, yikes, we're starting with an open world. This is the first thing on the wish list for 10th generation, an open world. Okay, so let me just get this straight. All right, Pokemon has released multiple open world games in a row at this point, and one common thread amongst all of them is that Pokemon is not good at making open world games. I mean, objectively, if you are looking at this logically, when did the biggest backlash for the series begin? It began on the Switch, and it started with the dang trees in Sword and Shield, which was kind of the beta version of an open world Pokemon game, right? The wild areas were open world, but they were zones within a world that was filled with the traditional Pokemon routes that were a bit more linear, right? And then we see Legends Arceus, which a lot of people loved, but the game was not good explicitly because it was an open world, right? A lot of people forget this because they haven't played Legends Arceus in a long time, but the render distance in those games was like 6 feet. You stood on top of a rock overlooking this vast open field. You ain't seeing no Pokemon, nothing's rendered out there. It's just a big old green field, and you gotta jump down and walk over there. Oh, the tree popped in. Oh, all the Pokemon are popping in now. Like, and I would say Legends Arceus is the most well received of all of the open world Pokemon games. They weren't even really open world. There were loading screens in between zones, but regardless, okay, Scarlet and Violet, I mean, even if you liked those games, come on, I'm extending an olive branch here. Can we at least agree that those open worlds were just empty? It was just empty. And later in this video, I'm gonna actually share with you guys what makes a good open world game, because a lot of people, especially the Pokemon community, seem to not even know what a good open world game is. But okay, so this article is starting with an open world, and this could not be more untrue. If we're gonna sit down and honestly have a conversation about generation 10 and what it should be, it should resemble the games in the franchise that are the most beloved by the fans of the franchise. And no one, I'm telling you right now, no genuine fan is gonna sit there and tell you that Scarlet and Violet is their favorite Pokemon game. I'm sorry, maybe it's the one that you played the most, maybe it's the one that, you know, because of recency bias, you just feel like you love it the most. I'm sorry, but I have never met a sane individual online or in real life who genuinely thinks that the best Pokemon games are on the Switch. They're just not. Everybody knows this, okay? So when you sit here and say that generation 10 should be an open world, it's like, where is your evidence for this? Why do you think this? What makes you think that they can do a good open world? They've never done it. They have failed multiple times in a row. There are multiple points on that graph that show that they are just incapable of building a genuinely good open world game. So why is this the first thing that you say when we talk about generation 10? It's like you out of the gate have no idea what you're talking about. You genuinely have thrown all logic in the garbage. You've thrown all past performance in the garbage. You've thrown everything that we know about Pokemon and their development cycle and the budget for these games. You've thrown all that logic in the trash, and you're just like, well, man, I really would like a good open world game. It's like, well, they've tried that already. Okay, I've talked enough about the good open worlds. Let's move down to dense cities. This is the second thing on the list here, okay? And this is where, like, again, we are at maximum hopium levels, right? This is peak hopium from the Pokemon community, right? I love what they say here. They are just completely detached from reality, okay? This open world shouldn't just be wide swaths of nature and sparsely populated villages. Oh, where did you get that idea? Is that because that's what all of the open world games have been already? Okay, got it. Like in Scarlet and Violet. Yeah, I know, right? Tell me about it. Its urban areas should borrow from ZA's Lumio City. While exploring only Lumio City and ZA can grow stale, more locations with the same variety of wild Pokemon in a dense urban environment would give a new Pokemon game plenty of personality. So they're saying that Lumio City from Legends ZA is an example of a densely populated city that should be in generation 10, and then they go on to say future cities should provide more exploration opportunities than just wandering into random NPCs houses like in the early games. Buddy, Legends ZA doesn't even do that. Do you hear yourself? This is where I'm like, are we playing the same games? Like, do you even know what even is this? What houses are you going in in Legends ZA. The stores are menus and you stand outside. Do you understand how stupid that is? You walk up to a cafe and the waiter is standing outside the cafe, and then when you want to buy something from said cafe, you talk to the waiter and a menu shows up. And this was the same thing in Scarlet and Violet. You're walking around, you're outside the academy, you're walking around, you go into a shop and it's just a menu and you just pick the X accuracy or you pick the super potion. This is not what a dense city in a video game looks or feels like. How is it a city if you can't go in any of the buildings? They're literally just cement rectangles at that point. Like, who even cares? Okay, so this article is 0 for 2. Let's see what the next one is. Stadiums for battles. I'll agree with him on this one. The gym battles taking place in massive stadiums in Sword and Shield did feel very hype. I'll give it that. New regional forms and paradox Pokemon. Fine, sure. I could care less, honestly. More evolutions. Holy eye roll, ladies and gentlemen. What even? I guess. Okay, I'll give you this one. Eevee's very popular. Umbreon is one of my favorite Pokemon, so I get why they would want more evolutions, but it's like, man, this is just not a priority. Like can we just have a good game and then we'll talk about evolutions later? Like, bro. Deep catching mechanics. Okay, people did really like the catching mechanics from Legends Arceus. You guys can let me know in the comments if you would want to see more catching mechanics like Legends Arceus in Pokemon games. I honestly am impartial on that. I don't care either way. More mega evolutions. Okay, I can get on board with that, right? People love mega evolutions. It's one of the reasons that people bought Legends ZA. Even though they hated how Mega Dragonite looked, they were able to look past that, and they in fact look past the entirety of the game, it seems, just so that way they can get new megas. Okay, fine, fair enough. Turn-based battles. Okay, we finally have hit something important here. Okay, turn-based battles is gameplay related, and this is actually something that Pokemon has done really well. And one of the things people always used to criticize Pokemon for is just recycling the same formula. But here's the thing, when you have a core gameplay loop that works well, and it's worked well for a long time, and also turn-based games are still popular. We still have games like Persona 5, Final Fantasy games. We even saw Honkai Star Rail blew up as a free-to-play example of this, and we had, of course, Expedition 33, and there's plenty of examples of turn-based combat being good. And if this is what Pokemon has done well for the majority of its franchise, we should continue doing this, right? They go on to say ZA took a massive turn for the franchise. Instead of turn-based battles, they fought in real time. Moves are used on a cooldown versus having a limited number of uses. Real-time combat made for a fun change of pace, but resulted in chaotic clashes that lacked the strategizing of turn-based battles. I appreciate ZA for trying something different and mostly succeeding at it, but the spirit of battling in Pokemon games lies in their penchant for methodical turn-based battles. Agree, 100% agree. Just leave the real-time battles to the Legends spin-off series, and let's bring back what Pokemon is known for and what they have done best throughout the history of the franchise. But man, I just can't believe that this was the last thing that they touched on. Like, this is probably their strongest point in the entire article, and it's put at the very bottom almost as if they were embarrassed to say it, but it's the most abundantly obvious of the entire thing. And then they led with the two worst things that they possibly could have picked. The two things that Pokemon has objectively failed at in the last few releases are the two #1 things you want them to do again. Okay, let's drill down on this a little bit more, and let's actually talk about what makes a good open world game, right? Because a lot of people, like, we've heard this for decades, for ever since the GameCube, and we saw Pokemon Coliseum and XD Gale of Darkness. People have been hoping for an open world Pokemon game that will tickle their fantasy. They want to go out on a grand Pokemon adventure, just like in the anime. They want to explore the world and discover hidden things and unlock mysteries and find Pokemon that they've never seen before, and they want to have that genuine experience. And people think that you need an open world to do that, and I can understand why you think that, but let's think about this logically for a second. There are 7 things that I would argue an open world game must have, with an optional 8th thing that we'll talk about in just a minute. Okay, the first thing, if you are going to make an open world game, you must commit to immersive and dynamic world design. You need to have freedom for the player with purpose, also known as player agency. There also has to be narrative integration. Okay, so a good story that is integrated into that open world. We need engaging gameplay loops, which I think Pokemon already does. We just talked about how turn-based combat is where the franchise historically has shined. We can just keep that. Okay, a successful open world game also needs somewhat of a smart world population, you know, intelligent NPCs that feel like they belong there. The world has to have a good technical performance and actual polish. Otherwise, why even bother? Just go back to playing classic World of Warcraft. Okay. And finally, we need a distinct art direction and good sound design. The optional bullet point here is post-launch support, and arguably you would want mod support as well, but we're not going to get that from Pokemon, of course. So let's drill down on this a little bit more. Okay, so what makes an open world immersive and dynamic through its design? Well, first of all, the world has to feel lived in. Okay, when you go into an open world game like Skyrim or Witcher 3 or Red Dead Redemption or any of the Grand Theft Auto games or whatever the case might be, Cyberpunk, whatever, the world has to feel real. It has to have logical geography, weather systems, ecosystems, and there has to be environmental storytelling there. Okay, there have to be details in the world like architecture or like the ruins that you find in Breath of the Wild. It shows history to that world. It's implied. You discover it out in the world. It's not told to you through text that you have to read across the screen. Okay, it's not just handed to you during the tutorial that takes 90 minutes with no voice acting. You hear me, Legends EA? The storytelling of the environment should be something that is easily done without a billion cutscenes. And finally, the players should be able to have meaningful interaction with the world and with the environment. You shouldn't just be running through this open empty world like we see in some parts of Legends Arceus, especially in Scarlet and Violet, and in the 2D maze that is Legends EA. And if we look at Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which I think is the best example of Pokemon trying an open world, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet objectively lacks genuine effort at world design or world building. They fail at all of the bullet points that we just talked about: believability, environmental storytelling, and interactivity, right? Scarlet and Violet, just straight up, okay? I'm not even talking about how you feel about the game, whether you like those games or not. That's fine, okay? That's your own opinion. Objectively, the world is not believable. The environment does not tell a story whatsoever, and it's not very interactive, okay? You're just running around an empty world. There's a complete lack of environmental storytelling here, and nothing makes that more obvious than the fact that, again, I'm going to harp on this again, you can't go in buildings. Do you understand? You go into the school, the academy, right? You can go into some of the gym buildings, and that's like there's some research centers in Area Zero that you can walk into, but that's pretty much it. You can't go, there's no NPC buildings, there's no shops that you can go into, there's no buildings. Okay, so you've already failed on building an open world here that has any sort of immersive aspect, or it's not dynamic. It's just an open empty canvas. The second thing we talked about was player agency. Okay, freedom in the world with a purpose. It's not just that the world is open. Who cares if it's open if there's nothing that is meaningful to accomplish in that world? Do you understand? So you need to have meaningful choices in your open world. So there needs to be decisions the player makes that affects the outcome of the game within that world, whether it's through side quests that you get or combat or exploration or whatever the case might be. And the only attempt here that they made in Scarlet and Violet was collecting the Gimme Ghoul coins, right? Like, ew, what even is, there's like 1,000 of those things. From a player agency perspective, we also would like to see non-linear progression. We saw this already in Scarlet and Violet. They can keep doing that if they want to, but it didn't really make sense in Scarlet and Violet because the world did not have level scaling. Does that make sense? So you can go in one direction and all of a sudden you find a level 45 Pokemon and you're level 8, right? And it just doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Now, that's not to say you can't have these boss monsters or really, hard things that you encounter early on. In fact, I like that about certain games. I like that, in World of Warcraft, you get to Duskwood and all of a sudden you find yourself face to face with Stitches and you're just not prepared for that encounter, right? But it's meaningful and people remember that about that game, if that makes sense. I just pulled that off the top of my head, right? That's how impactful that encounter actually is. And so in the same way, I appreciate things like that in Scarlet and Violet, but it would make more sense to do it logically where, you can do any gym in any order and the levels of your Pokemon don't matter, if that makes any sense. And then finally, we need more rewarding exploration in the open world of a Pokemon game. Okay, so every detour that you take in the open world should feel worthwhile, whether it means getting items or loot or some like narrative aspect of the story that you learn about through you discover an ancient ruins or something like that. And in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it's just the only, and you're not going to be able to unsee it when I tell you this. Okay, the only thing that you get that rewards you for exploration is that as you're going along, okay, you're riding on the back of your Koraidon, okay, you see these little glints, these little shimmers of glitter out in the world, and you walk up to it and you click on it and it's like, oh, you found a berry, and then you run, oh, there's another little shiny thing, and you follow the little shiny thing, and oh, it's a Pokeball, and then you walk, oh my god, god, I got a super potion, right? That is the only thing that you get. Just generic items that are just thrown, randomly generated throughout the world. It's stupid. It makes no sense. This is not rewarding. It's just walk from one shiny glinting piece of grass to the next and just pick up generic items. It's dumb. It doesn't make any sense. Meanwhile, you play a game like Skyrim or whatever, and you come across a cave system and it's like, what is this? And you go in, and then all of a sudden you're in the Dwemer ruins, and you're like, where? There's this whole underground cave system. Like, what even is all of this, right? And all of that has storytelling implications because you learn about the Dwemer, you learn about the role that they played in the history of Tamriel, and it's like there's nothing even 1% of that in Pokemon. In fact, Pokemon Gold and Silver did this better because you can find the ruins of Alph just through exploring. You just find it and you're like, oh my god, what is this? And then you learn about the unknowns, and it's this whole thing. We don't have anything like that in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The only like dynamic events that we have in Scarlet and Violet are the Titan Pokemon out in the world, which is like, okay, fine, fair enough, that's tied to the story and that's kind of cool, but it's not like a world boss. It's like literally just one instanced thing and then it's gone, right? Like the whole open world just feels bland and dead. It's just a big open square with just, they pulled some mountains up and that's it. Okay, let's move on to bullet point number 3, compelling narrative integration. Okay, we need strong world building in your open world. That's the whole point of it being an open world. You're building a world. Okay, it's not just the fact that there's no loading screens. That's stupid. I'd rather have loading screens if it means that the world is more immersive. Okay, so we need lore out in the world that underpins everything that we're learning about said world that we are in. So NPC behavior has to reflect the fact, like, let's, for example, you're in a city, okay, right out city there's some ruins or a cave system. There should be NPCs in the city that say, oh, don't go to those ruins, like this kid got lost there, or oh, did you hear about the ghost that haunts the mine shaft just outside of town, or something like that. Like, these things have to be intertwined. Does that make sense? And by the way, another thing with compelling narrative integration is that the player should face the consequences of their actions in the world. So for example, nothing, dude, this sticks with me, it's stuck with me for so long. When I found out the first time I booted up Elder Scrolls Oblivion for the PS3 and I found out that I couldn't complete a quest because I accidentally killed a shopkeeper, 30 hours ago in my playtime, and I'm like, oh my god, I had to literally start over, right? I had to actually start over because that is how impactful your choices are in that game. You genuinely affected the outcome of the game because that NPC is gone now. Okay, they are dead. And I know that sounds annoying from a gameplay perspective, and you could make that argument, right? That's totally fine. But my point is that the world is so genuinely built that these NPCs actually matter. They're not just throwaway characters that pop in and out of loading when you walk too far away, right? Like, I mean, everyone has seen the footage of Legends EA by now where you're running down and then all of a sudden the Mareep pops in and then the character pops in next to them and that's it, right? And you talk to them, there's this pointless dialogue, you know what I mean? Like Scarlet and Violet had the whole Herba Mystica quest line, right? You could have made that something like the Nirn route in Elder Scrolls, right? Like, it could have been a thing where you actually go out and like find these herbs. Okay, bullet point number 4 was engaging gameplay loops, and like I said earlier, this is actually probably the thing that Pokemon is the strongest at. Okay, their gameplay loop has proven successful for 30 years. Just keep doing that. Okay, just keep doing the turn-based thing. It worked back in red, blue, and yellow. It still works today. Just keep doing that. If you can improve it, great. If you want to throw in a twist, a gimmick, mega evolution, Z moves, whatever the case might be, do it. That's fine. Okay, but keep the same satisfying core gameplay mechanics here. We've already got balanced systems. Okay, we've got the leveling. It's simple. We've got the different stats for the Pokemon. They learn moves. There's type advantages. It's satisfying. It's simple, but it gets complex. Just keep that. Okay, the onboarding is easy. A kid can play Pokemon and understand it, but competitive gameplay is super complicated, and that's actually like really well done objectively. Like, it's just super well done. Bullet point 5 was a smart world population, and we've touched on this already, but we need, the NPCs to have realistic daily routines or reactions to players' actions as you're going throughout the world. Okay, you explore that cave system outside of town and you slay the ghost Pokemon that is at the end of the cave system. Okay, and now the legend of the Gengar curse is solved in that city, and all the NPCs should react to you in that way. You solved the curse of the Gengar that was outside the city. Do you understand? Beyond that, we need side quests. We need actual tangible quests that we can go on that aren't just fetch quests, okay, like we see in early World of Warcraft, but like genuine quest lines that you can go on and learn about the history history of a town, you know. I mean, damn, even Genshin Impact does this really well, where each like area of the map, whether it's Mondstadt or Liyue or whatever the case is, like you learn about the history of those zones, but you never get that in Pokemon fans don't even know that that's a thing in games, that you can like learn about the world. Like it's not even in their mind that they're missing out on this. They don't know what they don't know, if that makes sense. Okay, and beyond that, if you want the smart world population to be even more immersive, then you would have dynamic events, like I said before, random encounters. Of course, we've already got that in Pokemon, but also changing weather as you're traveling around the world, and also in-world events like caravans or like enemy patrols. You know, like why wouldn't you have Team Magma walking around and that you encounter them randomly because they're traveling from one town to another? Does that make sense? Instead, they're just in these stationary positions in perpetuity forever. It's stupid. Okay, bullet point number 6 was technical performance and polish, and this is something that, again, this is not even subjective, this is objective. This is something that you can actually measure, and we've seen Pokemon fail this time and time again throughout all of the games on the Switch. Okay, the only one that I feel like didn't have massive technical problems was Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know if there was any frame rate dips or anything like that. I don't remember exactly. I wasn't really, those games felt like just spin-offs to me, and I beat it, right? I beat the game and I caught Mewtwo, but it just wasn't like, I didn't really care. But believe it or not, if you're gonna have an open world game, you do need a stable frame rate. You actually do. You need less bugs than you can't be falling through the map like we saw in Scarlet and Violet, right? You can't have these memory leaks that cause the game to like lag and be glitchy, and I don't even think that's even fixed to this day. But if you play on the Switch 2, the problem's solved because it's just a stronger machine. But anyway, you shouldn't have had to buy a whole new console to solve those problems, although at least with Wind and Waves, ideally this is only on the Switch 2, so they can build it for the Switch 2 from the ground up. And bullet point number 7 was distinct art direction and sound design. We need a memorable aesthetic to Pokemon. Bring back Pokemon's actual genuinely good aesthetic. We need a unique visual identity. If you look at Pokemon Legends EA and you look at Breath of the Wild, I think everyone will agree that Breath of the Wild has a beautiful aesthetic to the art of that game, whereas Legends EA looks just like any other open world mobile game. It looks like Unity assets. It genuinely does. It genuinely just looks bad. I'm sorry. It can run at 4K 60 frames, whatever, but if the actual art direction is lazy, uninspiring, it's not unique, even the menu design, the heads-up display, the user interface, it's all boring. It's all stock garbage. It looks horrible. Pokemon is an anime, and some of the most iconic artwork for Pokemon is the watercolor artwork from all the way back in Generation 1. Ken Sugimori's artwork is legendary. It looks absolutely gorgeous, but you don't even have to build the whole game around the watercolor art style because we already have the anime, which looks good. So let me share with you guys this. Can you tell the difference between the top model and the bottom model? The answer is simple. It's literally just an outline. Just put an outline around the Pokemon and it will automatically look like it's hand drawn or like it's part of an anime or that it's cartoonish, but instead you've got whatever this is. They look like they're made of plastic or like they're just blow up dolls. Like there's actually no emotion here. There's no fur on these monsters, or well, I guess maybe these ones specifically wouldn't have fur, although pigs definitely have a little bit of hair on them. Okay, my point is there's no texture here, there's no outline, there's no nothing. These are just, it's lazy. It's really honestly lazy, and they tried to solve this with Scarlet and Violet. I will give them credit where credit is due. The models in Scarlet and Violet looked really nice, but they're still missing that outline that would have taken it all the way home. Pokemon needs to get back a memorable aesthetic that actually looks good, because the last few games have just looked awful, and honestly it's ever since we landed on the Switch, right? The 3DS and older, because there were technical limitations there, they did put outlines on everything, and ironically that technical limitation is what made those games look so much better. If you ever wondered why did Pokemon look cooler on the DS or the 3DS or even the Game Boy Advance, it's because they were forced to have a distinct art style around those Pokemon. But now that we're in a world where it's open world, it's 3D, Pokemon just decided to copy the generic open world assets of every other game. Like, why would you do that? Now I'm going to use once again World of Warcraft as an example here. Okay, that game came out in like 2003 or whenever WoW was released. I don't even remember, 2004 or something like that. I didn't play it back then, but you can tell when a screenshot of a video game is World of Warcraft, right? Even if you don't really play WoW, I can show you a picture of an orc, and a lot of people, even those that don't play, are going to be able to guess like, oh, I think that's a World of Warcraft. I think that's a picture of World of Warcraft, right? Like, isn't that because the art style and art direction is memorable? It's unique to World of Warcraft, and it's aged beautifully over over the years. Now of course they've made the textures more high resolution and all this other stuff, but like the foundation of those models is still the same all the way into 2025. Okay, and that is the power of a memorable aesthetic. The game will look the same even as technology advances. You can pull that aesthetic with you. Think of Fortnite has a very easily identifiable aesthetic. Same thing with Genshin Impact, right? These are not hyper realistic 3D worlds. They don't need to be. They just need to have their own aesthetic that people can immediately oh, that is Genshin Impact, that is Fortnite, or even Minecraft has its own unique visual aesthetic. It is memorable, it looks a certain way. We need that from Pokemon. And beyond that, sound design. Right now, this is one of the things that Pokemon actually does really well. Music in Pokemon games has been phenomenal. It continues to be great even through Legends EA. It might loop a little bit too much, it might be a little bit too repetitive, but everyone kind of agrees the sound design is solid in Pokemon games. The music, the footstep sounds, you can hear Pokemon cries out in the wild. That's good. I think maybe we could use a little bit more ambient sounds, you know, like birds chirping or whatever, like wind and leaves and stuff like that, maybe, right? But all in all, I would say the sound design is pretty good. And by the way, we cannot blame the shortcoming of the art direction on the limited power of the Switch hardware, because I already used Breath of the Wild as an example of a game that runs on the Wii U and has a distinct art style that looks phenomenal, right? Same thing with Wind Waker. It ran on the GameCube. It's got an art style, people love it or hate it, but it's got a distinct art style. So of the 7 things that make an open world game truly great: immersive dynamic world design, freedom with purpose and player agency, compelling narrative integration, engaging gameplay loops, smart world population, technical performance and polish, distinct art direction and sound design. Of those 7 different bullet points, how many of them has Pokemon succeeded in on the Switch? Bullet point number 4, engaging gameplay loops, and sound design is half of bullet point 7, so I'll give them a 1.5 out of 7. So 1.5 out of the 7 most important pillars to an open world game, everything else Pokemon fails at. And yet Pokemon Wind and Waves is trying to do a procedural generation island system in the buddy, you can't even build a good finite world. What makes you think that procedural generation is going to be the saving grace here? Like, you need to learn to walk before you learn to run. Does that make sense? Like, we are so far away from even thinking about the implementation of procedural generation in Pokemon. You need to get the fundamentals down, and you failed multiple times. It's not like they released one open world game and it was a mess and it's like, okay, well maybe next time. Like, no, you've had multiple games with open world components and they failed at a lot of these different things. Again, I know people like Legends Arceus, but that game also fails at some of these bullet points as well. Also, it's not even like really an open world game, but my point is, not only did Pokemon fail at building open world games, and now they are focusing on the wrong thing, which is procedural generation. Okay, not only that, but the budget is $20 million. It's a tiny budget for the most valuable media franchise in the world, mind you. So if any media franchise could justify a really big budget to accomplish these tasks, it would be Pokemon, and yet they won't do it. And it's not that they can't do it, it's that they won't do it because they know that the slop enjoyers of the Pokemon franchise are going to buy Generation 10 regardless. Generation 10 will probably outsell Pokemon Legends EA. You know it, I know it, everyone knows it, but it's still gonna have the same flaws as Scarlet and Violet, if not worse than that, because again, it's a small budget, they're focused on the wrong things, and they can't even do the right things correctly as they've shown with evidence. And yet even still, we've got Pokemon fans asking for the wrong things. They're basing this entire wish list off of hopium and nothing else. They're not thinking about what actually would make Pokemon good and set it up for success in the future. They want more of what we've already seen on the Switch, and what we've seen on the Switch is an absolute shit show, and I'm tired of it and I don't want it, and there is just absolutely no evidence that anything is going to change here. That's my biggest problem with all of this, is that my patience for the franchise ran out 3 or 4 games ago. At this point, I was burned for the last time with Scarlet and Violet, and now we see that they are doubling down on the parts of Pokemon that they have consistently failed at, and the community is cheering them on and hoping for more. They're asking for more of the slop games that we've already gotten, and with that limited budget and some of that budget being spent on procedural generation, you can bet that the rest of the game, I don't know where there would be, why would there be optimism for this? Why? It's purely hopium, it's purely hype. These leaks suggest that they are not focusing on the things that they should be focusing on to make a high quality Pokemon game. But guys, consider dropping a thumbs up down below if you made it all the way to the end of this video and help me fight off the Pokemon fans that just continue to enjoy the slop game after game. And you might think you're subscribed, but you're actually not. Double check down below.